Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the traditional territories of the signatories to Treaty 7. And I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share such a deep connection with this land. Albertans are desperate for help. They are facing an affordability crisis unlike anything they've seen in decades and decades. And they've also faced cost hikes caused by this UCP government that total more than $2 billion over the course of the last 3.5 years. So some families are waking up this morning and they're feeling a bit of relief as a result of what we saw last night. And that's good. But overall, what we saw last night is a poorly thought out plan, one that inefficiently uses tax dollars to address inflation and leaves out 2 million Albertans altogether. Now, I've heard from so many in the last 12 hours who don't have children, who aren't on income support, who are working 2 jobs and trying to put food on the table, and there's just nothing here for them. Many of them are renters or condo owners, so they don't get the electricity rebate. And when it comes to the natural gas rebate, well, that one was actually never designed to help. How do I know that? Well, because it's not paid out yet. It never has helped. These Albertans that I'm hearing from, though, they can't afford a car because of skyrocketing insurance. So they don't get the benefit of the gas tax being removed. And they don't have kids, so none of them get that biggest ticket item of support that was announced. And indeed, some are left to continue questioning whether they can even afford to start building a family together. So let me be perfectly clear as well. When it comes to the most vulnerable among us, the other thing is those folks are still far behind where they should have been had the UCP not broken their promise to them in the first place when they stripped away inflation protection in 2019 on the money they needed to survive. So, for example, an AISH recipient in Alberta is still over $3,000 short of where they would have been, even after last night's announcement. So, to be clear, what we need to do is be focused on supporting Albertans through this affordability crisis. But to do that, we need well-designed, thoughtful programs that will get directly to the people who need the help, and that those people can rely on that help to still be there past an election. And that's why the Alberta NDP has made a series of proposals that we believe will help the people who really need it. And I'm talking about a utility rate cap that will actually give true price certainty on home heating, no matter the temperature outside. I'm talking about a full-on freeze on auto insurance that we know has skyrocketed by 30% or more in many cases. I'm talking about an actual investigation into why prices for food are so high. And we need to be talking about housing, affordable housing, skyrocketing rent. All of that needs to be looked at because those desperate Albertans I started talking about this morning, they need very serious help. And so when it comes to income support, we need to be looking at undoing all of the damage by the UCP that's been in place, and we need to be providing real certainty for the most vulnerable among us into the future. And I'd like to say this other thing. One other thing that stood out for me after last night's presentation by Danielle Smith was her comments around healthcare. Now, she did acknowledge some of the crisis that Albertans are experiencing across the province in healthcare. But she went on then to specifically rule out dedicating more resources to fixing that problem. Now, for the record, funding for healthcare in Alberta has dropped under the UCP, and that's part of what's causing the crisis right now. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. So ruling out more funding when our hospitals are collapsing is short-sighted and cold-hearted, especially when you think about the hundreds of thousands of Albertans desperate to get the care they need for themselves and their loved ones. So, given all that, what's the Alberta NDP going to do? Well, we're going to keep pressing for measures to end the chaos in healthcare. And we're going to put out our own plan for public health care in the weeks ahead. And we're going to keep pressing for the affordability measures I described. And we're going to keep looking at how best to target Albertans with the real help they need as they struggle to make ends meet. So thank you, and I'm very happy to take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Just a reminder for those joining us on the phone to use the *9 function, and for those on Zoom to use the raise hand function to get into the question queue. Our first question comes from Janet French at CBC. Go ahead, Janet, your line is open.
Hi there. Rachel, you've likely seen the Justice Minister today calling for the federal government to rescind the RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucky's appointment because the Alberta government has supposedly lost trust in her. Do you still have faith in Brenda Lucky to do that job, and why or why not?
I think obviously there have been some difficulties with the RCMP, not necessarily entirely related to Brenda Lucky's tenure. What I would say, though, is that our Justice Minister is, frankly, this is a political tactic to try and build support for what I would argue is their bogus desire to bring in a provincial police force that is desperately unpopular. So I think that's really what Mr. Minister Shandro's comments are about, and I don't think he's really focused at all in a genuine way on improving the way we get police services and create community safety across the province through the RCMP.
Do you have a follow-up, Janet?
No, I'm good. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll go to our next question, which is from Michelle Bellefontaine at CBC. Go ahead, Michelle, your line is open.
Yeah, hi, Rachel. I want to follow up on your remarks about who gets the $600 in benefits and how single people without kids and that are not on any kind of benefit plan have somehow been cut out. What do you think is going on here? Like, why would they do that? Because I think, I think a lot of us know that there are lots of people in this province who are working minimum wage and maybe making $31,000 a year gross. So I'm just wondering why the government has sort of not included these people.
I honestly can't speculate. What it does appear to me on the surface to be is a bit of a back of the napkin kind of frantic plan that was thrown together by a premier and Danielle Smith, who's just really not very good at governing. And so it's not very well designed. Bottom line is, you're not going to address the long-term affordability crises that are being experienced by so many Albertans across this province by giving them a pre-election gift card, which is essentially what this is. And in particular, to your question, Michelle, it's a pre-election gift card that is missing out very significant families of Albertans who need support. So you've got families who have kids still living at home who are over the age of 18, who are struggling mightily because of out-of-control tuition costs. You've got couples, families who don't have children, who may be working multiple minimum wage jobs, trying to cobble together what it takes to put food on the table. And as you rightly say, there's families of single people who also are struggling to make ends meet. And so there's 2 million or so Albertans who were left out of this plan, who in many cases may have greater fiscal need than the folks that were covered by the group by the plan that was announced by Danielle Smith last night. And it speaks to me of a plan that was very quickly rolled out, almost on the back of a napkin, by a pretty green premier.
Do you have a follow-up, Michelle?
Yeah, I guess following up on what you just said, Rachel, I think that, there's a few of us that are getting quite a few questions from people wondering about, are the payments going to be monthly? I think actually the minister did say this morning that they would be monthly payments, but are they taxable? Just a lot of the measures that were announced last night, it seems that we're not getting a lot of details on how this is all rolling out. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering again, your take on this.
Well, again, I think that it was a hastily cobbled together plan that was probably more politically motivated than it was designed to actually address the the challenges facing Alberta families. And that comes from being a governing party that has spent the last 18 months entirely focused on all the wrong issues. And so now at this last minute, when they're finally hearing from Albertans that they are in desperate need of support, you know, they're running too fast and rolling something out that is leaving out very, very deserving Albertans who are struggling considerably. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I do want kids to get the support, but the other part of this is that this is a short-term thing. And I've heard from folks saying that they don't know how long this is going to last. So the money that's coming is not money that's going to fundamentally change the way people live or the kind of choices that they make for their kids, because they can't count on whether that money will be there for any length of time. And that's why we need to have a more thoughtful, systemic kind of change, and then one that really gets to the folks who need it most.
All right, we'll go to our next question with Catherine Gurkowski at Alberta Today. Go ahead, Catherine, your line is open.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. So in that speech, she did take a bit of a dig at your government's fiscal record. And I guess I'm wondering, when you talk about, for example, that ACE recipients are still $3,000 short and all these programs that you're doing more, have you costed out how much your proposals would cost, or is that something that's going to come forward as part of the election campaign?
Well, certainly, in some cases, when the more specific we get, we will certainly do costing, but what we do know is that yes, we would have dedicated more money to low-income folks, whether they be ACE recipients, seniors benefit recipients, other income support groups, than the UCP has or are doing right now, because those are the folks who need it the most. But you know, in terms of how it relates to this, you know, the pre-election gift card that has gone out to, you know, roughly 2 million Albertans, or maybe, yeah, roughly. You know, that is far more expensive. So that's why today I was talking about using taxpayers' dollars efficiently to really address those folks who are experiencing real hardship as a result of inflationary pressures, and focusing in on the costs that really are hurting them, and then also understanding that when you are at the place of just you know, struggling to pull those ends together, to make them meet at the end of each month as you're doing your budgeting, one of the things that's so critical about that is certainty and predictability. And so we spent a lot of money making a big announcement last night, but it doesn't give folks who really are struggling the kind of certainty and predictability that would help them manage the inflationary pressures that are making life so hard for them right now.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Oh, no, that's good. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to our next question from Dean Bennett at the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Dean, your line is open.
Thanks. Sorry, afternoon, Rachel.
Hi.
Can I get you directly on the announcement today? What is it, 10 million over 2 years for food banks? What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I mean, we've always taken the view that food banks are an emergency resource, and so that has, I think, historically resulted in them not getting the kind of support from governments that, you know, arguably at this point in their lives they deserve. So you know, we're fine. We think it's great that they are offering some support to food banks. That's good. What I would say, though, is that I hope that it does not come at the expense of other agencies that are funded through FCSS. I hope that they are, in fact, increasing FCSS, which is something that our government did when we were in office, and something that we have not seen the UCP do since being elected. So that would be my biggest concern there. And, but ultimately too, we have to look at who are the users of food banks. We have to look at what are the costs that are impacting the working poor. We have to look at the fact that, for instance, many people on income support had their benefits cut when the UCP effectively cut off rent supplements. So people who were getting about $775 a month plus a rent supplement of $250 a month, when that $250 a month disappeared, which it has done for thousands and thousands of Albertans under the UCP, then that drove up food bank use. So in the long term, we still need to design our programs to eliminate the need for food banks. And let us not forget that is must be a priority for provincial government.
Do you have a follow-up, Dean? If you have a follow-up, Dean, you'll have to unmute.
Well,
I guess I muted myself.
geez, I was just about to say, Dean, I've never not had a follow-up from that. This is going to be a major day. Wow.
I never know how to work this stuff. So from last night, the Premier, is an interesting comment. Right off the top, she felt the need to reassure Albertans that she takes the job seriously. And then later on, she said that, I'm not quite sure. She said she doesn't believe some of the stuff she used to believe, or she's learning on the job, or anyway, what do you think about sort of these personal comments from the Premier?
Well, I suspect that they were probably a veiled attempt to try and assure people after all the videos that we saw coming out on the internet over the weekend around her doing, promising to or advocating very passionately in a very convicted way for private funding of healthcare and having people fundraise in order to be able to afford to visit their family doctors. And so I suspect it was sort of a veiled effort to try and walk back or explain why or how she could have ever said such outrageous things. I'm not inside her head, but certainly if I was caught on film saying such dangerous, destabilizing, outrageous things within just a few months before becoming Premier, I too would want to offer some kind of explanation to the people of Alberta. I don't think she achieved what she was trying to, but I do understand the motivation.
All right, we'll do one last pass for questions or follow-ups. Just a reminder to use the raise hand function or *9 to get into the question queue. And with no further questions, we'll wrap today. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much. So much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.